Hello, friends. Looking at this ordinary elderly Englishman, it is hard to fathom that this old and weak grandfather, at one point, did something that saved the fates and lives of tens of thousands of people around the world. He was neither a Superman nor a superhero, but rather an ordinary person, just like you and me. This, however, did not prevent him from going down in history. I think you should most definitely hear about this person. Believe me, he deserves it. On May 19, 1909, a boy named Nicholas was born to a German Jewish family in London. His father worked as a banker. The family was well off, so when the boy grew up, he followed in his father's footsteps and became a banker. Nicholas led a normal life. He fenced, played tennis, and liked to ski in his spare time. In general, he was no different from other rich kids of the time. In December 1938, when the young man was 29, Nicholas planned to spend the Christmas holidays with a group of friends in the Swiss Alps. The stockbroker just wanted to relax and go skiing. However, the day before his departure, his phone rang. On the other end of the line was his friend, Martin Blake, who was working for the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia in Prague. Blake asked Winton to cancel the vacation and come to Prague, saying that there was a very important matter to discuss. "You can leave the skis behind," he said. This is how the story began. When he arrived in Prague, at the request of his friend, Winton saw that truly it was no time for skiing. Winton saw huge refugee camps, full of people who fled from the Sudetenland region, which was recently occupied by Hitler. What he saw was so terrible and left such an impression on him that it did not take Nicholas long to decide to stay in Prague. After the Kristallnacht of 1938, when the Nazis destroyed all Jewish shops, houses, synagogues, and the like, German Jews were forced to flee to the neighboring Czechoslovakia. At that point, they had no idea that the Nazis would soon occupy it as well. But what the young man found most striking was the huge number of children among the tens of thousands of people who abandoned everything when they fled for safety. A turning point for him was when he learned that the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia did not deal with children, but rather focused on the elderly and the disabled, whom they considered to be the most vulnerable sections of the population. No matter how stupid it may sound, but that's exactly how it began. One day, amidst the turmoil, Winton saw two kids on the street, a brother and sister, about 7 years old. They did not know where their parents were, so Winton took them to a shelter, which at that point was already full. That evening, he made the decision to rescue children in need. It turned out that there was nobody else doing it. Winton single-handedly created a program to take children out of Czechoslovakia. He set up a makeshift office in a hotel room in Prague where he was living. Parents, desperate to save their children, came to him. They understood that they and their children were facing a grim fate. Parents were ready to give their children to total strangers and part with them forever in an effort to save their lives. In his office, Winton recorded the names of the children in a notebook and collected their photographs. He was trying to come up with a way to bring the children abroad. Within a few days, huge queues of hundreds of people stood outside his room. Winton received them at all hours. He was not getting enough sleep and would stop working only to take food breaks. Of course, his activities could not go unnoticed, and soon the Nazis began to shadow the man. Winton had no choice but to begin bribing the Nazis left and right. All he wanted was to win a bit more time. He asked his dad to transfer his savings to Prague because his money was running out quickly while the appetites for the invaders were only growing. In this way, he was able to register about 900 children who needed to be urgently taken out of Czechoslovakia. At the beginning of 1939, he left two of his friends in charge in Prague and returned to London. There, he and several other volunteers, including his mother, called themselves the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia, the Children's Section. Using the committee's name, Winton began a frantic search for foster families and money, of which a lot was needed. By law, each foster family had to guarantee that they would care for the child until he or she reached the age of 17. They also had to pay a bond of £50 in case the child had to be sent back to his or her homeland. Winton reached out to all local newspapers and posted ads looking for foster families. He raised money from caring people. His pleas were heard. Hundreds of families agreed to foster and adopt children. Thousands of people donated money. Winton made up the difference with his own funds. After having done all this work, Nicholas approached the UK Home Office to get entry visas for the children. However, as it often happens, the officials were very slow to respond, and time was running out. It was only a few weeks before the start of the war, so Winton could not wait to receive answers from the bureaucrats. Instead, he decided to forge the visas. In the meantime, Winton's friend Trevor Chadwick became friends with the Gestapo official in Prague named Karl Bemmelberg. And when I say friends, I mean that he bribed him regularly, so that neither the higher-ranking Nazi officials nor the Czechoslovakian railway authorities would stop the trains carrying the children. The Gestapo official turned out to be very useful. He bribed the needed officials and even helped forge the children's documents. On March 14, 1939, a few hours before Hitler annexed Moravia and Bohemia, the first train with 20 children left Prague. Many years later, survivors recalled nightmarish scenes from the train station that day. Children sobbing and begging their parents not to send them away. They clung onto their moms and dads who, in turn, also cried and could not tear them away. Everyone understood that they would never see each other again. In total, Nicholas Winton organized 8 such trains, on which he transported children out of Prague over the course of a few days. As the last 2 trains were departing, things did not go according to plan. Those Nazis who were not receiving bribes found out about the operation and wanted to stop it. Nicholas, however, was in control of the situation and gave away huge sums of money. In this way, he also put himself in danger. Still, he was able to succeed. The trains left the station safely. They traveled through Nuremberg and Cologne to the Dutch port of Hoek van Holland. The children then crossed the North Sea by boat into Essex. At that point, they took a train to London. There, the foster families met the children. Each little refugee had a badge with his or her name sewn onto their clothes. However, to our great sorrow, only 7 out of the 8 trains made it to the safety of London. Thus, 669 children were saved. The last group of about 250 children were already on the train when Hitler attacked Poland on September 1, 1939. The borders closed at the same time, and unfortunately, the fate of those children is still unknown. It is likely that they all died in concentration camps. Vera Gissing, who co-authored a book titled Nicholas Winton and the Rescued Generation, survived by leaving the occupied territories on the 5th children's train. She said, of the 15,000 Czech Jewish children taken to the camps, only a handful survived. Winton had saved a major part of my generation of Czech Jews. The children whom he rescued became orphans by the end of the war. Their parents perished in concentration camps. After the war, many of them remained in Britain. Most, however, either returned to their homeland or emigrated to Israel, Australia, or the USA. Today, these rescued children are in their 80s. They call themselves Winton's children. It is said that Winton himself almost never approached the children during the train's departures and arrivals in London. Instead, he stood silently and watched from afar. But if you think that this is where the story ends, then you are deeply mistaken. The thing is that Nicholas Winton said nothing of his work to his children or grandchildren. Even his own wife didn't know about it. After the war ended, he continued to work as if nothing had happened. Winton's activities became widely known only in 1988, after his wife discovered his 1939 notebook with the addresses of English families who had adopted the rescued children. She sent letters to all the addresses, and about 80 of the children were located. A BBC television program, That's Life, invited Winton to be a member of the audience in their studio. He had no idea what awaited him there. Unexpectedly, the host told his story to millions of people watching the show across the country. Afterwards, she asked the children whom he had rescued to stand up. To his surprise, the entire audience rose. Those people were able to grow up, start families, have children, and enjoy life, only because of the old man in the audience. Gradually, Winton's story became more widely known. In September 1994, Nicholas Winton received a letter of thanks from Israel President Ezra Weizman. In 1998, he was awarded an order from the Czech Republic, and in 2002, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. In 2014, at the age of 105, he was awarded the Czech Republic's highest state honor, the Order of the White Lion. Among the children rescued by Winton are a lot of famous people: filmmaker Carol Reese, theoretical physicist and Nobel laureate Walter Kahn, astronomer and Nobel laureate Arno Penzias, human rights activist and translator at the Nuremberg doctors' trials Hedy Epstein, pediatric geneticist Renata Laksova, and even the founder of Israel's Air Force, Hugo Merom. On September 1, 2009, a special Winton train made up of a locomotive and train cars used in the 1930s traveled from Prague Central Station to London in honor of the 70th anniversary of the last Kindertransport, which was scheduled for September 3, 1939, but never took place because of the start of the war. The passengers of the train were Winton's children and their relatives. In London, they were greeted by Winton himself. At the time of the train's departure from Prague Central Station, a monument was dedicated to Winton. When Winton was asked how he mustered up the courage to carry out such a dangerous project, he said that while some people can look away from children who are in mortal danger and in immediate need of rescue, others can't. There is nothing left to do when children need rescuing and nobody else is doing it. For exactly 50 years, Winton didn't speak of the fact that in 1939 he rescued 669 children who were doomed to death in German-occupied Czechoslovakia. His heroic feat became known only by chance when his wife discovered an old album with the children's photographs and extremely faded documents. And what if she hadn't found them? Maybe the world would have never learned of this amazing man and his rescue operation. Nicholas Winton passed away on July 1, 2015, at the age of 106. He lived a heroic life and went down in history as a man who saved a huge number of children. He sacrificed his time and money and risked his own life. He did it all not for fame, but simply because it was the right thing to do, and there was no one else to do it. Friends, that's all for today. Share your opinions of this amazing person. Also, rate this video, and see you soon.